Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're presented by Safety One Source and going high altitude with a deep dive into mobile and locomotive crane safety.
Sounds exciting.
Specifically, we'll be exploring the ASME B30.5-2018 standard.
All right.
Whether you're operating these behemoths, hoping to someday, or are tasked with keeping everyone safe on site, this standard is pretty much your go-to guide for all things crane safety.
You know what's really interesting about this standard is that it doesn't discriminate by size.
Oh, well,
Right? We're talking crawlers, wheel-mounted, those on rails. It covers a surprisingly wide range of cranes.
so not just the gigantic tower cranes that you see towering over city skylines.
No.
You might be surprised by what isn't included, though.
Exactly. Digger derricks are out. And those tiny cranes, the ones that lift a ton or less,
Right.
they have their own set of rules.
Gotcha.
We're really zeroing in on the equipment that you're most likely to encounter on a typical construction or industrial site.
Okay, so this deep dive is for the real workhorses of the crane world.
That's right.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us a quick overview of what the ASME B30.5-2018 standard is all about?
Well, at its core, it's all about risk reduction.
Okay.
The standard lays out a comprehensive set of rules and guidelines designed to prevent accidents and ensure the safety of everyone involved in crane operations.
Got it. So it's not just about knowing how to operate a crane. It's about understanding the safety protocols that go hand in hand with those operations.
Absolutely. It covers everything from pre-operation inspections to load handling procedures to emergency response plans.
Sounds pretty comprehensive. Where do we even begin with a standard this massive?
A good starting point is always understanding the scope of the standard,
Okay.
what it covers and what it doesn't.
Right.
Section 50.1 lays that all out, for instance. It clearly states that this applies to cranes powered by engines or electric motors.
Okay, so the real workhorse is out there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that even cranes sometimes used for tasks that aren't strictly lifting still fall under this standard.
Right.
That seems a little counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It might seem that way, but think about it,
Okay.
Let's say you're using a crane to precisely position a large piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for assembly, you're not necessarily lifting it completely off the ground, but the potential for danger is still there.
Ah, I see. So even though it's not a traditional lift, you still have this massive piece of machinery in play, and the standard is there to make sure that happens safely.
Precisely. And specific sections like 5.1.11, Chapter 5.2, and 5.3.1 would all be relevant in that scenario.
Okay.
It's crucial for safety personnel to really grasp this nuance because it can easily be overlooked.
That's a great point. I can see how assuming the standard only applies to lifting operations could create a dangerous blind spot.
For sure.
So for all the safety folks out there, take note.
Absolutely.
Now, to truly understand the standard, you need to be fluent in its language.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean the specific definitions laid out in Section 5.2.
Yes.
They might seem dry at first, but trust me, these definitions are the foundation of safe crane operations.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's dive into those definitions. Then the standard actually breaks down the types of cranes covered in pretty vivid detail. What's the first one on the list?
First up, we have the commercial truck-mounted crane.
Okay.
Picture this. A rotating superstructure with a boom all mounted on a rugged truck chassis.
Right.
And the beauty is many of these retain their payload hauling capability with the truck's engine powering both the vehicle and the crane.
So it's a two-in-one workhorse.
It is.
Makes sense that they'd be common on construction sites.
Yeah.
What about the heavy-duty stuff?
For serious lifting power, you got crawler cranes. These beasts have a rotating superstructure boom and all the operating machinery sitting on a base with those distinctive crawler tracks.
Built for conquering any terrain. Now, what about locomotive cranes?
Yeah.
I haven't seen those around as much.
So they're similar to crawlers, but designed specifically to travel on railroad tracks.
Okay.
They can be self-propelled or moved by an external locomotive.
Ah, that makes sense. So they're the go-to choice for moving heavy loads along a rail line.
You got it.
And then we have the wheel-mounted cranes, which are further divided into two types: multiple control stations and single control stations.
That's right.
Okay, so is that about where the operator controls the crane from?
Exactly. With multiple control stations, you have separate locations for driving the crane and operating the lifting mechanisms.
Okay.
Single station cranes, as the name suggests, have all the controls in one place.
So those are the main crane types covered by the standard. But I imagine there are a ton of other terms that are crucial for understanding the standard.
You're absolutely right. And some of these terms, frankly, can be the difference between a safe lift and a disaster.
Okay, well, now you've got me hooked. Let's dive into those critical terms. What's first on the list?
Let's talk about tube locking.
Okay.
This is something every crane operator aspiring or seasoned, needs to understand inside and out.
Two blocking. Okay, you're going to have to break that one down for me.
Sure.
What exactly does that mean in the context of crane operations?
So imagine this. You're hoisting a load, and that lower load block, which is essentially the hook assembly,
Okay.
it comes into contact with the upper load block, or that sheave assembly at the boom point. Not good.
I can imagine what happens then.
Well, best case scenario, you damage the hoist rope.
Right.
Worst case, it snaps entirely.
Oh, wow.
And we don't even need to discuss what happens to the load and anyone near it
Yeah.
when that happens.
Definitely a scenario we want to avoid at all costs. So how do we prevent two blocking from happening?
That's where anti-two block devices come into play.
Okay.
These devices are literal lifesavers.
Really?
They're designed to automatically disengage crane functions if they sense two blocking is about to occur.
So it's like an emergency brake specifically for this potentially catastrophic situation.
Precisely, a critical layer of protection that can mean the difference between a close call and a major incident.
Wow.
And speaking of protection, the standard also dives into rated capacity load limiters.
Okay. Rated capacity load limiter. That sounds important. Can you unpack that one for me?
Think of it as a guardian angel for the crane.
Okay.
It's constantly monitoring the radius, the load weight, the crane's rated capacity, basically everything that affects a safe lift. If you even think about pushing the crane beyond its limits, this limiter is going to step in and prevent certain movements.
So it's like the crane has a built-in safety system saying, nope, not today, too risky.
Exactly. And then we have the unsung heroes of crane stability outriggers.
Ah, yes, outriggers. I've always thought they look like giant spider legs extending from the base of the crane. What's their role?
In a word, stability.
Okay.
Those extendable arms, they provide a much wider base of support, which is crucial for preventing the crane from tipping over, especially when you're dealing with heavy loads.
So they help distribute the weight and keep everything balanced.
Precisely, think of them as a counterbalance to the forces acting on the crane during a lift.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these definitions really connect to the practical aspects of crane operation. It's not just jargon, it's the language of safety.
Exactly. And another term that falls into that category is the qualified person.
Right.
This isn't just anyone on the job site.
Gotcha.
The standard is very specific about who gets to make the critical calls regarding crane operations.
So what makes someone a qualified person in the eyes of the standard?
It's all about knowledge, training, and experience.
Okay.
They need to be able to make informed decisions about crane operations, and that often means having a relevant degree of professional certification or a proven track record of handling crane-related challenges.
So someone you trust to make the right call in a pressure situation. Got it.
Absolutely, and this definition is important because it establishes accountability.
Okay.
Who's responsible for making sure things are done safely?
Right.
The qualified person.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, beyond those fundamental safety terms, there are a few others that caught my eye as I was reading through the standard, like critical lift. What exactly makes a lift critical?
A critical lift is any operation where the risks go beyond those of a typical lift. Maybe it's a heavier load, a complex maneuver, proximity to power lines, anything that introduces an additional layer of complexity or danger.
So it's not just about the weight being lifted, it's about the overall risk involved in the entire operation.
Exactly. And for those involved operators especially, awareness is key. A critical lift requires an extra level of vigilance, as the consequences of a mistake can be far more severe.
Got it. Okay. Critical lift noted another term that caught my attention, even though it seems pretty straightforward, is axis of rotation.
Ah, yes, the axis of rotation. You might think it's simple.
Yeah.
But understanding this concept is crucial for grasping the dynamics of crane movement and load behavior during a lift.
Okay, help me visualize it.
Imagine a vertical line running through the center of the crane from the base to the very top.
Okay.
That's the axis of rotation. It's the imaginary pole the crane spins around.
Okay, so it's the central point that all the crane's movements revolve around.
You got it. And last but not least, we have side loading. It might sound a bit technical, but it's something every crane operator needs to have on their radar.
All right, demystify side loading for us. What's going on there?
Imagine you're lifting a load straight up, but suddenly there's a gust of wind that pushes the load sideways.
Okay.
The sideways force is side loading.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's not just about the weight of the lid itself, but also about any external forces that might be acting on it during a lift.
Precisely. And those forces can put a tremendous amount of stress on the crane, which is why operators need to be aware of them and take steps to minimize their impact whenever possible.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Different types of cranes, key definitions, all crucial stuff for anyone who works with these machines. But I'm curious, From your experience, what are some of the most common mistakes or oversights you see people make when it comes to crane safety, especially in relation to the ASME B30.5-2018 standard?
It's interesting you asked that. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people just underestimating the importance of pre-operation inspections.
Oh, really?
You know, they might rush through it or skip it altogether, thinking it's a waste of time.
But those inspections are the first line of defense, right?
Absolutely.
Catching potential problems before they turn into major safety hazards.
Exactly. It's like checking the brakes on your car before a long road trip.
Yeah.
You might think everything's fine, but you never know until you actually take a look.
Right.
And when it comes to cranes, even a seemingly minor issue like a frayed cable or a loose bolt can have catastrophic consequences.
So for our listeners out there, let's be clear. Those pre-operation inspections aren't just a suggestion. They're absolutely essential. What else tends to trip people up?
Another common mistake is exceeding the crane's rated capacity. You know, people might get tempted to push the limits, especially when they're under pressure to get a job done quickly, but that's when accidents happen.
And that's where knowing those key definitions like rated capacity and load limiter comes into play.
Exactly.
This isn't just theoretical knowledge. It's information that can literally save lives.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the operators.
Right.
Everyone on the job site needs to be aware of the risks and responsibilities associated with crane operations. That's why having a designated qualified person is so critical.
Yeah.
They're the ones who ensure that everyone is following the standard and working safely.
It sounds like communication and collaboration are crucial when it comes to crane safety.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-person job.
Exactly. Everyone needs to be on the same page. Operators, riggers, signal persons, safety personnel, that they all have a role to play in ensuring a safe lift.
Yeah.
And clear communication is key.
So we've talked about the ASME B30.5-2018 standard, some key definitions, common mistakes, and the importance of communication. What's the one takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
At the end of the day, crane safety boils down to this knowledge is power.
Okay.
The more you understand about the equipment, the standard, and the risks involved, the safer you'll be. And that's not just for operators. It's for everyone on the job site.
Yeah. Well said. And if this deep dive has sparked your interest, I highly encourage you to seek out the full ASME B30.5-2018 standard and really delve into its intricacies. It's an investment in your safety and the safety of everyone around you.
Absolutely.
And on that note, a huge thank you to Safety One Source for presenting this deep dive into crane safety. We hope you found it insightful and informative. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.